What's going on, y'all? Movie Man Mikey here, and the month of February 2024 is already in the rearview mirror. Throughout that month, I was able to check out 9 new releases, so it's about time I get to ranking them. A couple quick notes before jumping in. While I only saw 9 movies that released in February, I was also playing catch up with a few movies from January, and those movies include Beautiful Wedding, The Kitchen, and Sometimes I Think About Dying. Since they technically weren't released in February, I won't be ranking them here, but I might save them for a video at the end of the year where I just talk about all of my stray watches. Whether or not that happens, you can always find my freshest opinion on the newest movies on Letterboxd, which I've linked down below. And with all that being said, let's get the rankings going. In the last place, number 9 slot for me has to be Argylle, Matthew Vaughn's latest disappointment. The first half of the 2010s saw him capture the hearts of both action fans and comic book nerds alike with great films like Kick-Ass, X-Men First Class, and Kingsman: The Secret Service. It was in 2017 with the absurdly over-the-top Kingsman sequel that many began to lose interest in his work, myself included. Having skipped out on the Kingsman prequel a couple years back, I remained cautiously optimistic heading into Argylle. And judging by its last place spot here, it's no secret I wasn't much of a fan of this, if at all. Aside from an alright at best performance from Sam Rockwell, Argylle is just an ugly and clustered mess of a spy film stuck in a never-ending battle to one-up itself with one convoluted twist to the next. Bryce Dallas Howard has turned in solid work in the past, but she is just an insufferable lead to follow here, while every other supporting character is massively underutilized. The $200 million budget is unapologetically wasted on some horrendous CGI. Most frustratingly, a pet cat whose inclusion already feels outdated. And just as the film trudges through its egregious 130 minutes, a laughably bad post-credit scene acts as the cherry atop the trash sundae. So with all that said, that is why Argylle is in my number 9 spot. Coming in at number 8 is going to be Madam Web, which was probably what most expected to be in that last place. But for what it's worth, it's more of a testament to how bad Argylle is, because this movie is definitely not good. While it makes for a more visually appealing endeavor than 2022's Morbius, the lack of any real narrative structure results in a pointless exercise that doesn't know what to do with its cast. The lackadaisical approach from Dakota Johnson was frustrating at first, but I eventually grew to feel sympathy for her given the lack of any real story. The trio of Merced, O'Connor, and Sweeney had been the most intriguing element for me heading in, so their relegation to roles that mean next to nothing in the end was especially annoying. Tahar Rahim puts his best foot forward in this villainous role, but it's constantly overshadowed by the overtly shoddy audio dubbing the edit couldn't even be bothered to work around. At the very least, the generic 2000 soundtrack was tolerable, and its breakneck pacing causes the 116-minute runtime to just fly by. So that is why Madam Web is in my number 8 spot. In the number 7 spot for new February releases is going to be Drive Away Dolls. This is the newest film from one half of the iconic Coen brothers directing duo. Over the last 30 years, the two have cultivated a dedicated fan base of film buffs by crafting authentic universes and compelling characters. While I still have more than a few films to get through their work, the most I enjoyed from them was The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, so my expectations for this new film were pretty tempered.
First time.
And after watching, I can confirm that I wasn't too big a fan. Leading the project are two more than capable actresses in Geraldine Viswanathan and Margaret Qualley, but their respective boring and erotic characters make for little intrigue and few laughs. The over-the-top editing includes iMovie-like transitions from scene to scene, as well as randomly intercut psychedelic visuals, which makes the brief 84-minute runtime feel all the more tedious. There are a couple side characters I got some mild chuckles out of throughout, but outweighing that is the wasted minimal roles of bigger actors like Coleman Domingo and Pedro Pascal. Its gag-filled finale ends the already flimsy narrative in such an underwhelming way, but the two characters each admittedly complete believable and fitting character arcs by the end, so that is why it's here and number 7. Coming in at number 6 is going to be the new biopic, Bob Marley, One Love. Coming off the critically acclaimed King Richard, it only makes sense that director Reinaldo Marcus Green was chosen for another inspirational biopic that takes its liberties in detailing the main character. For the record, I don't entirely negate the film for that. I'd even say King Richard was one of my favorite 2021 films. What makes this movie suffer so greatly is the paint-by-numbers story structure as a result of the script trying to present Bob Marley as exclusively the model for peace he is perceived to be by the general public. Any character without flaws is pretty difficult to latch onto and humanize, and it isn't any exception for Bob Marley. The acting here really isn't the problem for the most part, as the cast camaraderie does feel authentic. Kingsley Ben-Adir is great in the title role, and Lashana Lynch is pretty good as well, but the film deliberately neglects that dynamic by separating the couple for a large chunk. Reynaldo's stagnant direction ultimately makes the experience come across so uninspired in a way that we've seen countless times before, so that's why this movie lands at number 6 for me. And number 5 on my list is Lisa Frankenstein, the latest gothic fairy tale romance. As a screenwriter, Diablo Cody's snarky character work has garnered a cult following over the years, most notably with 2009's Jennifer's Body, and as a result, her attachment to Lisa Frankenstein, the directorial debut of Robin Williams' daughter Zelda, was intriguing from the jump. The horror comedy may hit all the exact beats you'd expect of a young adult romance, but given its scarcity in today's climate, that's not necessarily the worst thing to me. Catherine Newton and Cole Sprouse have both given performances I've enjoyed more in the past, but they still manage to have an electric chemistry here. Shockingly, what brings this down most is a tonally confused screenplay that tries to explore intense subjects like child violence and assault, but it does so with such brevity that it's careless and essentially meaningless by the end. Regardless, the 100 minutes were entertaining enough to warrant a streaming recommendation, so that is why Lisa Frankenstein is in my number 5 spot. Number 4 for me is going to be Ordinary Angels, which was also probably the most surprised I was this month given its faith-based nature. While there isn't anything inherently wrong with the subject, films revolving around religion tend to end up as one-sided echo chambers more often than not. What intrigued me specifically about this, though, was a co-writer credit of Kelly Freeman Craig, who, if you're not aware, she previously directed 2016's The Edge of 17 and Are You There, God It's Me, Margaret from last year, both movies of which I absolutely adore. The story structure is about as familiar as a tale like this is expected to be, and the pacing isn't the greatest, but the inspiring true story being told is tough to not root for. Hilary Swank is endlessly endearing as the eccentric Sharon, and Alan Ritchson's efforts towards the film's emotional core are admirable. The integrated religious elements never felt too overbearing or agenda-pushing, and by the time the credits came, it had a relentless heart that left me feeling uplifted. So overall, that is why Ordinary Angels lands here at number 4. In third place for me is going to be Land of Bad, the latest action film featuring Russell Crowe and the two Hemsworth brothers that aren't Chris. Right off the bat, when it comes to rescue mission war films, I'll say that this one isn't doing much to reinvent the genre. While he's still somewhat in his comfort zone in the lead role as a brooding soldier, the apprehension Liam Hemsworth brings to this role results in one of, if not his best performance to date. Crowe continues his pattern of choosing whatever over-the-top role he wants without missing a step as this erratic drone pilot, and he perfectly matches the script's chaotic energy. What makes this movie stand out over the previously mentioned is its tonally inconsistent screenplay, which thankfully never takes itself too seriously. I was never entirely sure when to laugh, and the finale features some of the wackiest cross-cutting across any movie, so I'll definitely won't be forgetting that anytime soon. Most of the movie requires your disbelief to be suspended into the atmosphere, but it did admittedly make for an entertaining enough watch, so that's why it's here at number 3. Coming in at the second place spot is Suncoast, Hulu's most recent original release. Here, we follow a distant mother-daughter relationship as they're both coping with the soon-to-be terminal illness of their respective son and brother. This is directed by Laura Chin, who it's worth mentioning has a brother who passed away from a terminal brain tumor back in 2005, and with care, her anecdotal experiences work to tell this story about a dour subject like death in such a way that confronts its harsh reality while also bringing out the beauty of life. I wasn't completely sold on Nico Parker's performance as the lead in the beginning, but by the time I reached the end, she got some real emotions out of me that can't be overlooked. Woody Harrelson plays a supporting role as this protester amidst the landmark Terry Schiavo medical case back in 2005, and given the subject matter, it does feel naturally woven into the narrative. And Laura Linney as the overbearing mother is giving a fantastic performance here, which is to be expected. It just struck me a lot more watching her as this empathetic character following her most villainous role in the amazing Ozark. If I had any complaint, it really comes down to how Parker's fellow high school peers are utilized, or rather underutilized. Overall though, I enjoyed this film enough to have it end up as my second best film of February 2024. But coming in first place for me has to be Netflix's Orion and the Dark. Heading into the month, never would I have expected an animated film on streaming to resonate with me as strong as this did. While its story boils down to a kid facing his fear, the maturity given to these characters allows the concept of fear to be explored in such a further way than most family pictures would. The lead character of Orion is voiced well by Jacob Tremblay, but the real standout for me here had to have been Paul Walter Hauser as Dark. Charlie Kaufman is behind the script here, which I was pretty shocked to learn at first considering his previous works like Anomalisa and Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. For his first time working on a kids movie though, I thought his style fit the narrative well, and I especially love what he brought to the characters. Throughout Orion's journey, journey, we encounter additional mysteries of the night, which include insomnia, unexplained noises, and more. And the creation of these characters only aids in further showcasing the film's creativity. Really, my biggest critique here is towards some ideas being explored in the final act that were so broad I couldn't entirely grasp their implications. Overall though, this was the most enjoyment I had from any of the last month's releases, so that's why it lands here at my number 1 spot. So that about wraps up my rankings for February 2024. Glad to have finally seen a movie I'd at least rate a 3. And now it's time to hear what y'all think. Whatever movies y'all saw in February 2024, be sure to comment down below, ranking them best to worst, worst to best, however you want to talk about it. Let's talk about it. Once again, shout out to my Letterboxd link below, where I not only have this video in list format, but I also have countless reviews of thousands of other movies as soon as I see them. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks a ton for making it to the end. I've been Movie Man Mikey, and always remember, enjoy yourself.